Howdy nerds! Another day here at Gonro Games. Been slacking with the videos, so I thought I'd just better hurry and do a video today, get some content out, and we can talk about some things that came in today and overall discussion about where the market is leading and where I see the next few months going. And there's, of course, good, bad, ugly right now in the market. But first of all, let me set this camera down. And oh, that'll be a good spot for it. Let's just see. I want to show this sucker that came in. So I love this fan mail here. So this is from William Sadowski. Made this little Gonro Games in a box. Am I the old guy? I don't know if you can see that, if that's glaring too much here, but appreciate the little. We'll definitely put it up. Eventually, I want to get some sort of setup that other, YouTubers either do green screens or have some cool little setup to talk about. You get my absolute disaster of a messy store back here that I absolutely need to clean. It's on my to-do list. If you see in the background, there's box opening video junk back here. There's things that need to be sent off, and I'm an absolute disaster. So I've been working on some other projects in my personal life, and yeah, I haven't been doing the best with cleaning, making this area. What do I do? What is the old adage? I need to clean my room, and that way I'll be more successful. But anyway, so I'll just read this off. It says, hello, Gonro Games. I really enjoy your YouTube channel and videos that you share. I follow you on Facebook and really dig how you run events and bring people in your store. When I read about the events you run, I wish I lived closer to participate because it doesn't seem like any stores in my area are as friendly and outgoing to their customers. So actually, one of the complaints here that I have at my store is that sometimes I'm too outgoing. That people don't like it when I'm, too friendly and too talkative. Some people want to be just left alone. Anyways, I'm a bit of a crafter. I made a bunch of extra shadow boxes from the release of the Brothers War set, which has been one of my all-time favorite sets. Since I'm more of an old school player, it may have been jarred out in transit, but there is a little insert of your store name in front. But if you open the shadow box and remove it, it will just have a logo of the Brothers War, so you have options. Oh, okay. So I guess I could remove this, and then it'll be a Brothers. Okay, right here, I guess. But yeah, of course, we like the Gonro Games better than Magic the Gathering. I hope you enjoy this decoration, but if it's in your style, I hope you'll find a good home and maybe through a customer. No, we'll definitely, I will throw this somewhere in a, like I said, I want to eventually just build something, and I've said this before, I know I sound like a broken record, but eventually I want to get back to the point to where I am doing content more full-time again, because this is what I enjoy. I actually do enjoy, I just need to get over the fact of, I can't stand video editing. Absolutely cannot stand it. For my personality, sitting down with my ADD and where I need to be constantly doing stuff like doing video editing is like chewing nails, going through the painstaking process of I have good ideas for videos, and I have been able to edit some cool videos in the past, but man, I just need to get over that kind of that disgust that I have for making or editing videos. And I always keep saying, once I get my life in order, once I get more organized, and once I get more, I get to the point where I can actually sit down and do it. And then I just need to come to realize I'm never going to get to a point in my life where everything is just going to be streamlined and efficient to where I can have this fantasy scenario where I'll have this perfect utopia to edit videos and without having all the other distractions of the day. So eventually I need to just get to the point where I get in the rhythm of sitting down, pumping out the content and doing videos. So I do want to make a backdrop, and this will make an awesome thing for the backdrop. So I really, really appreciate it, William, for sending me this cool little shadow box. But anyway, back to the content of this video. So we have this sucker that is released here, the Temporal Forces. And again, this is so, I have a long-term patron. Let's get this. Ooh, is that going to fall if I do it that way? Okay, so I have a long-term patron that is going all in on Pokemon. Let's have a little discussion. I've actually seen the Pokemon sales start to increase. Now, here's the thing about Pokemon. Pokemon sales never did stop. They've tapered off for sure. They have gone down from their pandemic Logan Paul era, which was just absolute insanity. It was so much money that had no business being in Pokemon that started flooding into the Pokemon market. And that created a missed signal to especially the US market, that there was actually more demand than there really was. Because I've talked about this so much, and that's where I get my term that's now being used by other YouTubers is jokingly, utility, where utility is king in this industry, meaning people that actually want the products to play with, to use, is so much healthier than collectability. We've seen collectible markets crash throughout the history of mankind. I mean, that's the Dutch tulip was one of the very first kind of hysterical speculative moments where a lot of demand that wasn't actual demand went into a quote-unquote product that then ended up crashing the market because there needed to be an end user. There needed to be actually people that wanted tulips, when in fact the only reason that people wanted tulips is because they thought they could flip them. And I think that if any of the markets right now of the big TCGs, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Flesh and Blood, all of them, the one that's been hit hardest by the speculation, by the people that don't care about Pokemon or don't care to utilize it, don't care to actually play the game or even collect the game, that have entered into this market just to flip it, I think Pokemon is at least 2 to 1, 3 to 1 of even Magic. Like Magic had that hysteria of their One Ring, but then every set after that was such a failure that I think that money has moved out. That no longer, you don't have these massive companies. You have like places like Troll and Toad that just stopped even doing Magic because they're like, wow, this is just, like, we can't be in a market that's going to be just run based on speculation. Pokemon, I think, is just a billion times worse than that. And it's like one of the reasons that I'm still really like Lorcana, even now Star Wars Unlimited and Magic the Gathering, is they tend to still be more utility driven than Pokemon does. And that's what's kind of sad about Pokemon. I've said this over and over on this channel too, is Pokemon is breaking records. They're shattering records at the tournament level, at the local level, of people actually playing the game. But it's still not this good correlation between what products are actually selling and the utility or the tournament scene or the actual, people playing that whole scene. And that is very, very worrisome because it just shows how much product is out there, and especially since the 2020 era of Pokemon product not finding a home for that quote-unquote end user, for the person that actually wants the tulip. And I think that there is going to be a reckoning with Pokemon, and that is why I'm so cold feet with Pokemon. And everyone's like, well, Pokemon's always recovered. It's always recovered. But has it? I think that bubbles have recovered Pokemon more in the past. Like we had the Sun and Moon that completely collapsed, but then there was another Pokemon bubble with like when a lot of the celebrities came of age and had money, like the Logan Pauls. We had this like hysteria that happened right after the Sun and Moon era into the Sword and Shield era, where Pokemon became this fad to collect and to buy. And in what I really think happened is, let me give you a little bit of a backstory of what in my personal life of something that went in my family. So my dad, he remembered baseball cards. He remembered growing up and having those little bubble gum that had a baseball card in it. He remembered buying packs of baseball cards. And then when he grew up, when he got old and had kids, and he'd look at cards that he used to have that were destroyed or he sold or his mom threw out, that type of stuff, and he looked at them and saw that they were worth thousands of dollars. And so my dad started like buying us and encouraged us to get into baseball card collecting because he thought that that was just like a smart, and he did the same thing with coins. If he would have kept coins from his era, from things that weren't that old when he was a kid, they would have been worth a lot of money. And so my dad kind of got into collecting coins and baseball cards and encouraged us to collect coins and baseball cards. And simultaneously, every other boomer like him, every other person that is coming of age now, that are now in their 60s and 70s, was doing the same thing with their kids. They were encouraging their kids to buy baseball cards. They themselves were putting a substantial amount of their own income into baseball cards, thinking that they can retire off them. And it was this whole hysteria of the culture that was thinking that baseball cards would surpass, or they would just, that it would just follow the same trends that they remembered when they were a kid. That, if I would have just had these. And anyway, I'm getting to the whole point of this is what ended up happening is it caused the sports cards market, especially baseball cards, to collapse. All of that era of when my dad was buying us baseball cards, this is between 89 and 93, I think, is when we really collected, and my dad was really into that. They're worthless. They're absolute garbage. We're talking about like Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards. We're talking about, what era was back then, like Sammy Sosa. All these cards, these super iconic baseball cards are still worth Nothing. Because I even looked them up. I mean, they shot up during the pandemic because there was hysteria of everything collectible. It was just absolute nonsense when the most obscure things went up, but everything's come crashing back down. And that is what I really, really feel about Pokemon. I feel that Pokemon is now entering that age where these kids that grew up with Pokemon, grew up with having these shadowless Charizards. You hear, it's like the Black Lotus and Shadowless Charizard is the exact same thing. As a store owner, every person that comes in tells you they owned a Shadowless Charizard. Every stinking, I used to have that card and my mom threw it away, or I spilled something on it, or crayons, or everyone says they had a Shadowless Charizard. It was the same way when we first opened the store too. I had a Black Lotus, and I just loved to just like giggle inside because there were no Black Lotuses in this area. Black Lotus never existed in rural Utah. There were some places up in Salt Lake and Ogden during that time period that actually did have Alpha Beta Unlimited, but the vast places in United States, the vast amount of game stores and areas did not carry Alpha Beta Unlimited. By the time that Magic hit mass markets, it was in revised. By the time that most stores picked it up, revised. So it just makes me chuckle. Everyone, their dog had a Black Lotus. Every stinking one of them. And it's the same thing with Charizard. So anyway, they have these kids that thought that they had all these expensive cards. If they would have just kept them safe, if they would have just kept them pristine, that they could have retired on those sort of stuff. And of course, you see the examples of people that did, those kids that did keep their Pokemon cards and were able to flip them and sell them. And so now those guys are coming of age. They're in their 30s now. So all the kids that grew up with Pokemon, it's like, I'm too old for Pokemon. Pokemon came out when I was already in high school. And so, it was kind of a kid's game. I did no Pokemon collecting. I started with Magic the Gathering, revised edition, collected a little bit through there. I did keep all my cards, but unfortunately they were all stolen. So, I have one of those stories of whatnot. But anyway, with Pokemon, we're having all these woulda, shoulda, couldas of these that are now dads that are now having their own kids that are now encouraging their kids to start collecting Pokemon cards. Or, like my dad, was putting a substantial amount of their own income, because they have so much disposable income now that they're adults, into actually collecting, and it's something they can do with their sons and daughters. They can actually, hey, let's collect Pokemon. That is still the vast majority of people that come into my store to buy Pokemon cards are dads with their kids, by far, or moms that are giving their kids rewards. Like, we have a lot of moms that will come in and like, you did your chores, here, get a pack type thing. And so it is dads collecting Pokemon cards and putting, or there's so much more like single men now that exist in today's society than there were back in, my dad's time period, that are putting a substantial amount of their income into collecting Pokemon. And history, doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it always rhymes, isn't that the saying they have? And this just reminds me so much of the baseball card era. And now, going back, like, okay, Kevin, then why are you, being so hard on Pokemon and not as hard on Magic? And I think it's just the nature of Magic and Pokemon being utility-based versus collectability-based. And I remember that Rudy, Alpha Investors, we will disagree forever about this utility versus collectability, because one of the things he stated that was so good about Pokemon is they don't reprint stuff. So that Umbreon out of Evolving Skies is always going to be sought after and always going to be valuable, and it's never going to be, Evolving Skies is never going to be reprinted. And then, so it gives this faith to these products that then long term are just going to go up and up and up. And we haven't seen the same thing with Magic, especially with Time Spiral Remastered. Time Spiral Remastered was the turning point of a lot of sealed product basically taking a dive bomb, because now it was like, okay, boxes are not safe. A Time Spiral box is not safe from getting a reprint. And the whole thing is this misguided notion that Pokemon will not do that, I call BS. And I think the biggest warning sign was the Classic Collections, and we also had Celebrations, and we also had 151 didn't have reprints, didn't it? But Celebrations did, and that we've had a bunch of just reprints from Pokemon, and they will enter that era. They will enter that era of, okay, we have these Evolving Skies cards that people are sought after. Let's make a premium version product where you can get cards from Evolving Skies. I'm calling it. That will be the next thing with Pokemon. And then you have this massive domino effect at that point of, all right, well, these aren't safe anymore, and they have no utility. That's where I wanted to go with is Pokemon. If you actually look at the people that play Pokemon, the format that is by far the most popular is Standard. And once things rotate, the popularity goes, it takes an absolute nosedive of people that actually play extended, or I don't even know what the format after that is. I mean, there are very few results. It is impossible to even find like places that are running these events. I know people say, well, my store does, yeah, the vast majority do not. That's the whole thing with Pokemon. It stays within this rotation. And so the problem with Pokemon too is they basically put their foot on the ground that they don't want utility to be a driving factor in cards that are worth money. So whenever a card does well, they make an EX box, or they make a tournament deck box, or they make, they just actually just print the entire decks a lot of times. And like what Magic does with Challenger decks, and they make sure that they kill utility, that it's only collectability. And so for me, that is why I am I'm absolutely cold on Pokemon, because if they're going to do that, if they're going to die on this hill, if they're going to go this direction, it is very volatile. And again, people can say, well, it's got 20 years, it's got 25 years of Pokemon outperforming Magic. I get it, and I get the whole thing that's like, oh, well, I remember the hysteria that happened during Sun and Moon when everything collapsed, and you could get Pokemon product from 80% off, oftentimes from distributors. Like Burning Shadows, like that era was so bad that like distributors, it actually changed the policy of Pokemon printing, where they started to do these limited print runs and only printing to pre-orders, kind of how what Yu-Gi-Oh is going back to doing now, because they've killed that brand so bad with reprints. And yeah, speaking of Yu-Gi-Oh, I won't touch that. They just came out with these suckers. What are these suckers called? But this was the actual product that was doing well. Like Yu-Gi-Oh has been struggling so bad in 90% of its products, but there were a few products that were outliers that were doing well. So what they do? They reprinted those products. And I'm like, biggest facepalm. But what they need to do is they need to allow, like the companies like Pokemon and Magic and whatnot, they just need to allow these products to go through the roof and be inaccessible. If it's not affecting the game, if it's not affecting, especially Pokemon, you're talking about like I know that especially Commander players or Modern players, they definitely complain about game pieces, being accessible, having the ways to actually play the game. But Pokemon and oftentimes like Yu-Gi-Oh, like there's so many versions of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh that accessibility to Yu-Gi-Oh is easy. I mean, it's cheap. It's very cheap to build a deck. And same with Pokemon, when people only care about the latest standard format, well, who cares about a product that was, yesteryears for a card only, basically it's only collectability at that point that even matters. So anyway, like, why to get off on a tangent of Yu-Gi-Oh? The game is completely, like no one should carry Yu-Gi-Oh at this point. I mean, it's a big box store, basically impulse buy at this point. I don't think that any game stores are making money in Yu-Gi-Oh. Anyway, I digress. So that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make with Pokemon is just be careful with Pokemon. Again, just because in the past it's recovered is not an indicator of the future. I haven't seen any behavioral change in Pokemon. They haven't limited release numbers. The boxes that are like Paldean Evolved and or Paldean Fates and all of the Scarlet Violet era boxes, none of them have recovered whatsoever. They're all still under $100 a box, which is oftentimes more or less than stores have to pay distributors. If you're going through some of the more expensive distributors, you're paying about $105 per box for Pokemon. Just to give you a base, like if you're a brand new store and don't have connections and aren't buying thousands of dollars of Pokemon product, and again, and that's kind of the problem I have with Pokemon versus Magic, is Magic does, I mean, we can insult Magic all day long with like the Amazon dumps and other things, but they have a little bit better price controlling, at least with their distribution, where stores are on a bit more even playing field of actually buying, inventory. So a small store and a big store and big online stores, they basically have this relatively the same cost. Pokemon, there are all sorts of wheeling and dealing with going directly through the Pokemon company or going through arbitrage through like buying from these Singaporean or Japanese or sometimes even from Latin America that they print things in English, it doesn't sell well there, or it just then gets back in the U.S. markets, and they actually they get like a sweetheart price. I've talked about how that Lorcana was rumored to be doing this as well in some of these. They were trying to enter into some of these other markets, these not so popular European markets, and it just wasn't, these stores just didn't have any care to take this inventory, and so there were like U.S. arbitrage that was going in like, hey, just tell your distributor you want all that you can get, because they're selling for $200 a box now, and if you're paying $45 a box, then, by the time we even pay import fees and everything else, we can still make way better margins than if we were to order it from our distributors or the scarcity we're having right now. And we've seen a lot of that actually happen in the Pokemon market. And so again, there's just so many factors, so many layers of why I don't like Pokemon. And I could be proven wrong. People like look back and make fun of this video 2 years later, like, look, Kevin, they're all $250 a booster box, blah, blah, blah. That's the one thing I can say is if you are going to go into one product, booster boxes are the way to go. They're the ones that actually do seem to, first of all, they're easy to ship, they're easy to store, and that, now doing this business for as long as I've done, that matters way more than you think when you have all these Lucario V-Stars that are sitting here rotting here, that if I were to try to ship this, minimum $15. So if it's like a $20 product, there's no way that people want to pay $15 for shipping for it. And either way, I get eaten by the shipping, or I break it apart for booster packs, and at that point, it's not the same price per pack that you can get from other ways to go. So anyway, that's kind of my, I guess I made a good discussion about Pokemon and how I vehemently disagree with a lot of people of collectability versus utility, because utility for me is just so safe. And if you look at Magic, Magic is suffering from collectability. No one wants to collect it right now. If you look at Shieldred, the cheapest version of Shieldred oftentimes is the foil. And this is what we've noticed at our store, that all of the regular copies sell. And then now customers will come in and be like, well, I got a borderless foil. It's like $2 more. Are you willing to pay $2 more for this, $30 card versus a $32 card? Because everyone has bought the normal version because it's slightly cheaper, because they actually just want to use it to play with it. For far and above the most common Magic player that comes into our store are people playing the game. The same is not true for Pokemon, and even Lorcana at this point. For Pokemon, the vast majority of people that come in and buy from me, and even I would say even online, the people who buy from me are collectors or speculators. They are not people who actually play the game. In fact, I'll ask some people, do you play Pokemon? Hey, we run events on Saturdays. You interested in coming in and playing Pokemon? No, I don't know how to play the game. And I'm like, well, okay, all right. So, then these are the people that are like buying booster boxes worth of stuff and whatnot. So, and same thing if you look at actually the Pokemon, like these decks, like these Challenger decks and stuff are doing bad in Magic because they mass produced them and they're just poorly done. And you can go back to some of my videos where I ragged on Challenger decks and Pioneer decks, Pioneer Challenger decks especially. But Pokemon, they come out with these like battle decks and stuff like this. If you want like a product that never goes up in value, that goes on blowout from distributors like a month later, battle decks. It's because no one wants them. There's no booster packs, there's no collectability out of it. And that kind of shows you the culture of Pokemon. So anyway, hope you find this kind of topic interesting. If I ranted and raved about Pokemon, I was going to show some other stuff that came in, but this video's gone long enough. Yeah, this is a good sign for Star Wars. Star Wars seems to be utility based right now, which is awesome, which is, Lorcana seems to be going that way too. I was actually very impressed with Lorcana cards, that the vast majority of movement on TCG Player was cards that we're seeing play. We had the Enchanteds when they were released. We had Enchanteds of popular characters, not popular as far as being played, but popular as in just Disney popularity of the movies they were in or whatnot. Because of course, like Minnie Mouse. We've seen those come out the gates as being the expensive cards, and we've seen them actually completely reverse now that the expensive Enchanteds are the ones that are actually seeing play. They're not necessarily the ones that have like the most popularity of the collectability of that. And so that is a good sign for both those games. And unfortunately, I don't see the same thing happen with Pokemon. It's still cards that have nothing to do with play that tend to, for whatever reason, I can never figure it out, why some cards are worth money and some cards are not. There's all these rumors of pull rates that start happening, and then it causes like this hysteria of trying to get this card so you can get it graded. And again, grading is so stupid in my opinion. Like I don't know, I have no faith in grading. I don't know why people have, and at this point, again, it's just become such a Dutch tulip. It's become because the people are valuing grading because other people are valuing grading. And the only reason that grading has value is that other people have valued grading. But as once the, the emperor's clothes come off, or, if people realize the emperor has no clothes, then I think that is the market that can crash the easiest. And again, utility, utility, utility. I'll always bank on utility. And to me, I would rather miss out on these big margins that can happen, or these windfalls that can happen on collectibles when collectibles have hysteria, to have these safe and natural growth of utility. So anyway, I got some customers coming up. I can hear them coming up the stairs, so I will cut this video short, and maybe we'll continue this discussion again. But who do I know? I am just a lowly shop owner that has like 1/1000th the wealth of some of these big time, you know, online personalities and YouTubers and big vendors. But there's my 2 cents. Hope you enjoyed this. Kevin with Gonro Games. Thanks for watching.